Welcome, folks. This is Will Brownsberger, State Senator, with John Hecht, State Representative, and John Lawn, State Representative, just doing a check-in with folks and an opportunity to talk about what's going on in the community and in the State House. Would John or John like to say some words about things that are top of mind for them?
John, you want to go?
Take it away, John Hecht.
I'll just say a couple of words. Happy to be with everybody here tonight. Thank you for being part of this. It's really important, really helpful to us. Obviously, we're facing some huge challenges. I think we can be relatively proud of how Massachusetts has handled these crises of the last few months, but there's no minimizing, the scale of what we have endured. 8,000 deaths, 900,000 people on unemployment, and a very uncertain future. It's if ever there was a time for us all to be pulling together and trying to do what each of us can do to turn things around, this is it. Again, I think we can be reasonably proud. I think we've shown pretty good competency in government, pretty good leadership from the governor and from officials at multiple levels, state and local. And maybe most importantly, I just have been incredibly impressed with the responsible and engaged citizenry that we have that has, as I say, endured a lot, has made a lot of sacrifices. And I, would like to say that we're turning the corner. I don't know if you noticed the news today that we did, in fact, today for the first day in 3 or 4 months now, have no reported COVID-19 deaths.
Ooh.
Which is wonderful news. It's not something that we can expect to hold. But and of course, with everything going on in other parts of the country, we're going to have to be very, very hardworking and very vigilant to keep things from heading in the wrong direction here. But as I say, I just think it's important that we're talking to each other. Important that we are hearing from you and getting your ideas about what we as a state can be doing, and your reactions to some of the things that we're working on, and are working with us, as we move forward to try to navigate, these multiple crises that we have to dig out from. The economic crisis and the budget crisis that has come out of this public health crisis it's a huge challenge for us. And now, hopefully we're also be addressing, a crisis that was sort of always there, sort of a hidden in plain sight crisis around racial justice and racial equity, which is presenting us with an enormous challenge, but also an enormous opportunity. So look forward to hearing people's ideas about that and to doing what we can to move forward on that front as well. So just mainly want to say thank you all for being here, for being part of this collective effort.
John Lawn, congratulations. Did you get the elections bill voted today?
Yes, we did. How are you, Will? How are you, everyone?
Good.
Thank you for having this forum tonight, and I appreciate being involved. Thank you, Jonathan. I think you covered a lot of some of where we're going with the COVID crisis, and hopefully things are heading in the right direction, which they seem to be, and we just gotta hopefully stay the course with that. And I think Massachusetts has done an incredible job of lowering the transmission rate and dealing with this crisis as best we can. As Will just mentioned today, the House of Representatives, we voted to pass the COVID-19 elections bill today that I believe was at 158 people voted in favor of it. I think one person voted against it. I am, if some people don't know, I am the chairman of the House Committee, the Joint Committee on Election Laws. So for the past few months, we've been working very hard trying to come up with a bill that would allow for safe and accessible voting this fall and for the rest of 2020 in both the state primary on September 1st and also the general election on November 3rd. So it was a team effort to come up with a bill. The House bill that we passed a few weeks ago was very similar with not many changes compared to the Senate bill that was passed. So we had a conference committee and were able to resolve those pretty quickly. So today, as we said, the House voted, and I believe the Senate will take it up on Thursday, and hopefully the governor will sign that immediately. But I can go into more details on that later, but I just wanted to say hello and appreciate everybody being here.
I want to say, John, congratulations on that vote, that elections bill. I mean, that's a good example of the House and the Senate working effectively together. You and Chairman, the Senate Chair, which was Barry Feingold, I think did a great job of bringing the bill to a place that everybody could get on board with. And I'm sure the Senate will pass it with the same kind of strong margin, and people have some real safe options to vote, and I think it'll increase turnout as well. So I really appreciate the work you've done on that. I want to make sure we recognize we've got our Town Council President, Mark Sideris, with us on the call. We've got our Democratic State Committeeman, Steve Owens, on the call. If there are other elected officials, I haven't been able to pick you out of the lineup here, but feel free to text me or put something in the chat mentioning that you're here. Thank you for being here with us. So I think that we should go straight to the process of questions. I think John and John have given a couple of the highlights. The other thing that we're working on that's really big is the whole issue of policing and what can we do to reduce the risk of a horrible event like what happened in Minnesota. Reduce the risk that would happen here in Massachusetts. You can never say never, but what we certainly want to do everything we can to make sure that we don't have something like that here. And so we're in the process of doing that and asking what more we can do around the issues of policing, police culture, systemic racism, and all of those difficult issues. So that's a conversation we can get into as the evening goes on with questions if people would like to. So the format is basically, this is a conversation, this is a town meeting, you can all see each other. You're on the same footing as we are. We do control the mic, but we will recognize people in order as they raise their hands. You should see someplace on your screen an ability to put your hand up. And if you put your hand up, then it's first come, first serve, and we'll call on you as you go. I see one person has put their hand up. You can see in the participant list. Hey, Russ, tell people, I'm going to call on you, Russ, and you can tell people how you put your hand up. So Russ, you got to unmute yourself, Russ. You have two devices, Russ? This was your problem last time, right? Still unmuted. I'd say I'm going to go to Rita and I'll come back to you, Russ. Hey, Rita, you got the floor.
Okay, so my question is regarding the House bill that was just passed on.
Before you go on, Rita, can you just tell everybody where you found the hands up button on your screen?
Sure.
Lower right.
I went to the participants list, and on my name, I see an option for more menu, and I pulled that down. Oh. Yeah. No, actually, I'm sorry. It's in the participant list, and it's the third option at the bottom.
Right. Okay. I don't have it because I'm a host. All right. Well, go on. So hopefully people will find that. I see hands going up. People are finding it. But go ahead, Rita, your question.
Okay, so my question is regarding the bill that was passed to expand voting options. I just wanted to know what the timetable was. I know that it's supposed to go to the Senate on Thursday. Do you anticipate it getting signed by the end of this week?
I would think there's a great chance of that. Go ahead, John.
So, Rita, yeah, just to clarify, good question. So we did the House bill a few weeks ago. The Senate did it last week, and we had a conference committee to reconcile the differences, which really were not many. We were both pretty much in agreement. And maybe this is a good time to, since this is something that's very important and there's a lot of kind of questions around, and maybe go over a brief overview of the bill. If that's all right, Will, do you think I should?
I think people would like to know that, and just to answer Rita's questions from the Senate standpoint, we will definitely act on it right away, which for us means Thursday, and then the governor will probably act on it pretty quickly. I'm sure he thinks it's a good bill. I can't imagine him vetoing it, and I'm sure he'll get it signed. But go ahead, John. I think we'd all be interested to get the summary.
Yes. So the early voting, what we're going to allow is for many options to vote this fall. And for the first time in the state history, we're going to have early voting in person in a state primary, which will be 7 days, including a weekend of Saturday and Sunday. And then for the general election, we're going to have a total of 14 days of early voting in person. And what's going to happen is on July 15th, we have asked the Secretary of State to mail every registered voter in Massachusetts an application to vote by mail. That voter can take the application and mail it back in and indicate for the primary which ballot they would like to receive, and they can vote by mail. They can take that ballot and bring it to Town Hall. We're going to have a secure lockbox at Town Hall where you could drop that ballot in, or there's going to be prepaid postage when you receive the ballot, and on the application, there's going to be prepaid postage where you can drop it in the mail. That's going to happen again in September. You're going to get an application. So you're not going to have to request an application. You're going to get one in the mail, every registered voter. And that's going to happen again in September for the general election. You will get the application in the mail and you'll fill it out if you would like a ballot for the general election. And we're also instructing the Secretary of State to have an online portal at least up and running by hopefully October 1st. We're trying to have it for the primary, but we understand it's a very tight time frame to have that done, but we have, he is committed to having that done by October 1st. So when you get that application in the mail, you could go online and fill out your voter information online, which would be verified by the town clerk, and you can request a ballot online. We are also, as I said, going to have the in-person voting, and then we will also have polls. So you will have 3 options to vote, either by mail, in person, early, or at the polls. So this bill is pretty comprehensive. I think it allows a lot of options for people to vote. And hopefully, if things, continue to get better, I think a lot of people will still go to the polls or vote early, but it will certainly give many options to voters who don't feel comfortable to do that, to vote by mail.
Thanks, John. Shall we go to the questions? I think, Russ, you were your first person with your hand up, Russ. So are you ready to take your turn, Russ? For some reason, there you go.
Okay,
Russ.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. I have no problem with a ballot being mailed out to an individual, as long as that individual has to go to the town, stick that in a box, or hand it to someone. Because I trust the people in the town hall, but I'm sorry that you could have voter tampering if anyone else touches that ballot other than the person that's voting and the people in the town hall. So I have a problem with it if it's allowed to be mailed back. That to me, that's a real issue, because voter fraud, I'm sorry, we don't want to give anyone an opportunity for voter fraud. Our voting system is very important to most of us, and everybody that's on this Zoom today, I know it's important to you. Now, basically, the other thing that I want to mention is this, okay? Now, you have to remember, this is my opinion because I did a lot of research when this whole pandemic entered into play. I actually researched for 200 years on past pandemics. Now, there was no doubt in my mind that after reading that shutting down was the right thing to do. And, those that did well during the pandemic of 1918, which was called the Spanish flu, it was the cities and towns that isolated and made sure that there were no major gatherings. They did better than the other cities and towns in the other states. There was no question that was the right thing to do. But I have had a problem as far as the reopening is concerned. And I feel that we should have started the reopening in the beginning of June with all the government mandates and so forth and so on. Now, as John mentioned in the beginning, that 900,000 people in this state are unemployed. And truthfully, I don't think we're ever going to get to anywhere near where the unemployment number was in this state prior to this pandemic. And there's no doubt, there's no way it can happen. There's no way we can fill theaters and stadiums and so forth and so on. And a lot of businesses are going to end up closing, which many of them already have.
Hey, Russ,
So,
Russ, I just want to sensitize you too, because I got in trouble the last time in this conversation because we had so many people waiting at the end, we couldn't get to them. So just get to
okay,
it.
all right, okay, sure, all right. So anyways, again, I feel that we should have reopened earlier. Statistically, the fearmongers are always incorrect. Now, when you take the deaths and put this into perspective, we've only had 8,095 deaths in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is, compared to the population of 6 million, and I know every life is important and all, but you put it all into perspective, and it's not that many. During the pandemic of 1918, there were 675,000 Americans that died. And remember, the population at that time was half of what it is today. So you want to equate that, we're talking about 1,300,000 approximately, if it was equivalent to that pandemic. So we're nowhere near that. And so I want to see America go back to work, and everything that we do to let more people go back to work. And again, with government guidelines, I think it's very important to all of us.
All right. So look, John, you guys want to respond to that, or I got a response if not?
John,
I'll just say this, Russ. I mean,
you should go ahead on voting, John.
Go ahead, John. You got it.
John Long, talk about the voting. John, you want to come on that?
Oh, sure. About the voter fraud?
Yeah.
Question, sure. I know, Russ, that's been brought up, but I have to tell you, the original bill I filed was to, in the general election, send ballots to every registered voter in Massachusetts. I certainly realized that that was not actually, from speaking to my colleagues, listening to testimony, one of the big differences between the primary and general election is, in the primary, I think many of you may saw, Joe Kennedy had asked to mail ballots to every person in the primary, but that's actually a very difficult thing because you have not only a Democratic party, a Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, we have over 2.5 million unenrolled voters in Massachusetts. So mailing ballots in the primary did not make sense. In the general election, and also the turnout in a state primary is very low. I mean, the percentage is really from 8 to 15% of registered voters who vote in a state primary in a non-gubernatorial year. One of the things with the general election is they anticipate probably 80 to 85% participation in the presidential election. And many people just vote in a presidential election. So they go inactive. For example, the city of Boston, Marty Walsh had testified that over 52,000 people were inactive voters. So mailing a ballot, even though it's one ballot in the primary, in the general election, really had a lot of concern with people. So we worked with people in the committee and realized sending an application was the right thing to do. The voter fraud thing, Russ, we've been voting by mail since the Civil War. There is no real studies that there is voter fraud. You will get checked off just like any other time you vote. We need to do better, cleaning up our voter registration and when people pass away and making sure they're current, which is ongoing. But there really is no real good data that shows that. And I think that we have secure elections here and hopefully that will remain, but that was obviously a big concern. But I think that is addressed, and I think that is not a concern in our elections here.
I just want to speak a little bit to the issue of the pace of reopening. I think what we have to be driven by, the one thing that's totally unacceptable is to have our healthcare system overwhelmed. And, the state's done well because we shut down and stop the spread and reduce the number of cases. And at the same time, we really increase the capacity of our healthcare system. But there's a finite limit as to how far you can go with that. And so that's the one thing that we don't want to allow to happen. So I think what we did was we shut things down, we dodged that bullet. And now we're in a stage where we're trying to open up step by step and see how it goes. Because nobody actually knows for sure how it's going to go. I think when you don't know how it's going to go, you make adjustments slowly and you see how it goes. So I think that's we're in the phase now of seeing how it goes, trying to open up and then watching the numbers really closely. So I think we're opening up at a prudent pace to see how those numbers work. And I do think the governor's, pacing that in a very thoughtful way, and I appreciate his approach to the challenge that we have. Let's go to Alana, who's the next person in line.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yes, thank you. So, quick question for John about elections, John Long.
Yep.
Will there be any additional funding from the state for the cities and towns to fund those extra pieces in the election?
Yes, there will. There are a lot of funds available through the CARES Act, and also the Secretary of State has funds available to Help Vote America, the HAVA funds, especially for the technology that's being used. We're also, one of the parts of this legislation is giving electronic iPads for updated voter information at the polls, which I think Russ would speak to that. It speaks to just updated voter information. So yes, there will be funds available, and the state will supply funds in a supplemental budget when it's necessary after the election. And there is a lot of the mailing and the prepaid postage being covered by the CARES Act.
Just besides for technology, there's the extra expensive staffing for keeping for the early voting.
Right.
Especially on the weekend.
Yep. Yeah, certainly that's part, and there will be funding available for cities and towns. One thing in this legislation also to speak about staffing is the checkout. So, when you go into the polls, you check in, and then we've allowed for cities and towns to eliminate the checkout poll. It's been a bill that's filed for many years that many people think are unnecessary. The Secretary of State has thought otherwise, but in this legislation, it allows some flexibility for clerks for short staffing, and that will free up a lot of poll workers by eliminating the checkout poll.
John, another thing you've done right is you're allowing them to, when they get the ballots in advance, the absentee and early votes coming in by mail, you're allowing them to run those in and tabulate those as they go in advance of Election Day, correct?
Correct, and that's another important piece of the legislation, because before, city and clerks would wait and hold those ballots and have to process them on Election Day. So they will be able to process ballots. So they will not be able to count them and have an official count until Election Day, but they will be able to take the ballots as they come in and scan them and process them, set them aside, and then they will calculate them on Election Day.
So that's a really big deal because a lot of the work on election day in the current process is just running in those ballots. We had a town election in Belmont where they had us. I volunteered to be part of one of the poll workers in that, and it took all day just to run into the absentee ballots, even though it was a low turnout election. So once we get this going on the big elections, it's going to be that provision of what you did, I think, is going to be extremely important.
Right. I think one thing that we work very closely with the City Clerks Association and the Town Clerks Association to listen to them. We certainly understand that we're putting an enormous challenge on our city and town clerks and staffing, and we need to support them. And a lot of the things that we did was trying to help them and alleviate some of the pressure that they're going to have and be able to, to function their job. One of the things that in my original bill that I filed was allowing for 2 weeks of early voting in the primary, which after speaking with the clerks and listening to them, realizing that when they run a early voting in person at town hall, they're essentially running an election every day, running up into the election. So it's a lot of stress on the clerks. So we were trying to eliminate as much pressure as we can. So we did cut that down on the primary election to 7 days, but allowing for weekends and also allowing for off hours, so you could vote after work. So allowing hours, let's say to 4 to 7 at night, so when people can vote after work. But a lot of the concern was eliminating pressure on our cities and town clerks.
Okay, a totally separate issue. Excuse me. And I wrote emails and talked to some of you about this back when we started reopening, and even in terms of some of the quote essential businesses when we were shut down. That all of the guidance about keeping people safe is all written as executive orders and guidance, and it's not laws, and we have enforcement problems. So if you have an employer who's choosing to do the right thing, so to speak, it's great. But if you don't, you're stuck. So what we end up having, and I have a specific employer in mind, a particularly large employer in Watertown that I've heard about this secondhand. So I don't want to go too far with it because it's secondhand, but I do believe it. And I'm sure it's happening elsewhere as well, is if it's a retail business and the public has any kind of access, be it a restaurant or a retail store or whatever, that the public can go in, then the local departments of health have jurisdiction because they're protecting the public's health. But if it's not a public business and you may have a lot of employees there, but it's private property, neither the state nor the town have any enforcement authority. So there's at least one major business in Watertown with a large number of employees in a warehouse situation, no masks, people bullying the few people who do want to wear them, people going to vacations, at least planning to go to vacations to hotspots, come back and not quarantine, on and on and on. And there's no way that anybody can do anything about it, at least from what I've been told and the person involved has been told, because there's no enforcement authority at either the state or local level. It's private property.
Well, no,
So
that doesn't
what do we
sound
do?
right. But you know what, Alon, let's take this one offline, because I think you're raising a really legitimate issue. But if there's, you and I talked about this at length, but if there's now a case where there's somebody that's violating that's specific like this that we can complain about and do some work on, we're more than happy to try to escalate and that make sure that there's compliance. So let's take it to do that. You and I talk tomorrow morning, if not before.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
I'm going to put it on my to-do list for tomorrow.
Okay. Or I'll email you tonight, Will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, Jackie Van Leeuwen. You there, Jackie?
Yes, thank you. I'm curious about the work that is being done to assist or mandate communities for more transparency and accountability as far as police officers how complaints and concerns can get safely reported. I'm looking into it some, and I see that there are definitely cities that have been very proactive and have in real time the ability for the public to see what's going on. But it just seems like, I know at least in Watertown, there's a very kind of double viewpoint of, or I don't know, like one viewpoint that there's absolutely nothing wrong going on, and the police are above reproach. And then there's another story that we're hearing of people being, I mean, I know for a fact that, 3 of my friends that live in Watertown have neighbors who are people of color and won't complain because they're just really afraid to, and that has to change. There has to be some way that, people can be more comfortable and safe and have a place to hold just more transparency and accountability, which I think in theory a lot of people agree with, but I'm wondering what you all have suggested or are working on to make that more of a reality, knowing that there may be a lot of pushback on it, but I think it's really, really important. Thank you.
I'm eager to talk about, share some of the things that Sen. I see John getting ready to answer. Go for it, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a few thoughts on that. I mean, I think Jackie, one of the main themes of several of the reform proposals, including a couple of the major bills that have been filed, is to create a more consistent, statewide set of standards for reporting concerns about policing, and particularly, policing that's disproportionately impacting people of color, or involves excessive use of force. The sorts of things that have really exploded into the public consciousness, and that we really do need to make a priority here, as it needs to be a priority everywhere. There are a number of different possible ways to do that. The governor has a bill that he's filed recently that would empower a statewide committee to receive information about police misconduct and potentially decertify police. There would be a system where every police officer in the state would be required to be certified to begin with, and then if there were instances of misconduct and other sorts of infractions, there would be a way for a decertification process to occur, and also much more transparency vis-a-vis the general public as far as what's happening with particular officers and their conduct. There are other proposals to empower the Attorney General to perform more of that function. There are other proposals to create citizen boards. So I think that is a major part of what we're going to be looking at over the next month and beyond. Watertown, I generally think that the department here is a community policing oriented department, and in my experience, I do think that they, as a sort of guiding philosophy, do work to maintain good relationships with people in the community and recognize how important that is for them being able to do their job and provide public safety. But Watertown's no more immune to to problems than anywhere else. And my hope would be that people would not feel that they can't come forward. If they feel they can't come forward, that's something that really absolutely needs to be addressed. And I believe that the chief and the other members of the leadership at the police department should be hearing that, and I believe that they would respond. And I think our political leaders in the town council, the town manager, should also be part of that process. This is not something that should be done solely within the confines of the policing world. That has been one of the problems that we've been having. So I think that's, again, one of the major thrusts of what we're going to try to be doing in the coming months, is to open up that culture, open up those processes, which have unfortunately been too closed. And Watertown needs to be part of that.
So I'll just say this, that the House and the Senate are both moving forward on a range of ideas in this. And I hope to be able to report publicly very soon what specific group of things the Senate is going to focus on. And I look forward to working with the House as they define their approach. And our goal has to be to get this on the governor's desk in a matter of a few short weeks, so that he can sign it before we are on our way out of the building for the July recess. So this is going to happen very fast, and I think you can expect some significant changes happening very fast. Let's see. So that's next up would be Tom Cooper. Tom, unmuting. Tom is still on mute. I don't see it. There you go. You got it.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So, Will, I'm following on the earlier questions. I'm curious to know what you and your colleagues, both at the statewide and the local level, have in terms of specific actions that you've either got in mind or are in terms of are on the docket or are thinking about specifically to start to address these issues of social injustice that are so persistent. And Massachusetts certainly hasn't been immune to any of those. So because I think there's a rare window of opportunity here, as we have ironically been shut down by the pandemic, to everybody has been forced to focus on something that has been persistent for 400 years. But I'd love to hear the specifics that you and your colleagues, both local, and I'm a Watertown resident, live near John Hecht. So, and I appreciate your taking the time tonight.
I'm happy to speak to that. I want to make sure John and John do as well. I am in the next, there's short-term, medium, long-term, and there's also what we've done in the past. I mean, equity has been an enormous focus of the legislature. The state budget, roughly 2/3, 3/4 of the state budget is some form of income transfer, whether it's mass health or welfare programs or social services or education aid, which through our actions last fall is even more heavily allocated towards those communities that are most in need. So the goal of lifting up the communities across the state and reducing inequality is something that is really what the state budget is in fact mostly about. And of course, that was a big focus of our criminal justice reforms last year in 2018, which were some of the biggest reforms that people had seen in any state, which were all more on the justice side of it, what happens after arrest. Let's lift people up instead of lock them up. And so let's have a positive correctional experience as opposed to a negative one. But now I think we are really turning back to the policing. And I think the short run actions that are new, that are drawing a lot of attention, focus on one, use of force standards. When should it be okay for a police officer to use force? And I think what we want to do is limit those occasions. Current law allows police to use force to effect arrest, to prevent escape, as well as to prevent harm to another. So I think we need to rethink that a little bit and limit the situations in which police are going to use force to only those situations where it makes the most sense and where everybody can agree that it's for safety. And so that's the thought. That's number one. Police use of force, no-knock warrants, use of tactical weapons, those things. And so there's rules issues there. We want to reduce the risk that any police officer will mistakenly or deliberately take an action that will set off a firestorm around the world. I mean, we just can't have that coming from Massachusetts. We think we've done a lot. We're going to do a lot more. And then there's the issue of police accountability. How do you handle complaints? How do you make that more transparent? How do you assure that there's real follow-up? That will be, the creation of a structure in which that can happen is the other half of the major police reforms. And I think there's a collection of things around data and reducing racial profiling and so forth that are also likely to be part of a final package. But the heart of it is the use of force and the police accountability stuff. These are things that are going to be, and I'm speaking a little bit of a high level, but within a matter of days or weeks, these are things that will be out in entirely specific terms for people to review and discuss. So we're a little bit vague right now, but we'll be very concrete within days or weeks, but within a few days or a week or two, I guess I should say.
To speak for a second, to the broader systemic inequities that you were referring to, Tom. I think that over the last few weeks, we've begun to, as I said at the beginning, this is a crisis that's been hiding in plain sight. You referred to 400 years. I can't remember 400 years, but it's certainly been in existence all of my life. And one of the striking things about the way in which the conversation that was, that ignited by what happened in Minneapolis and in Louisville and in Georgia, in which it differs from past conversations is the way in which it has gone beyond policing, while it, as Will has said, and as I think you're going to see from our actions here over the next few weeks, certainly it has caused and is going to lead to very significant reforms in policing, but it has gone beyond that and has really forced us to confront the many, many other ways in which people of color, and especially African Americans, are at a structural systemic disadvantage in this country and have been for generations. And how we're going to come to grips with that as a state, as a country, it's a huge, huge challenge. As you say, it's an opportunity, but we need to be realistic about what it's going to take to address that. Will was just saying the state budget is already largely about, income transfer, but we haven't done nearly enough. So this is one of the questions where I really want to hear from you and from others who are on this call and from others around the area. What do you think we can be doing? Do we need to just do more in terms of income transfers? Do we need to do it in a different way? Do we need to focus on particular areas, whether it's education or on healthcare or on housing? Each of those is a huge undertaking. Where are the resources going to come from? And what are each of us willing to do to be part of that solution? If we're really going to come to grips with this, we're going to have to ask ourselves some very hard questions and be willing to do some things that we have not been accustomed to doing. And I want to hear what people think we should do.
I agree. I won't waste your time at the moment, but yes, I agree entirely. Thank you.
Well, you know where to find me, Tom, so come by.
I'm afraid I do.
You can stand in the backyard and I'll be on the deck.
All right, well, it sounds like you guys are close. That's good. Let's go to Hal Shear, who is next in line. Hal, did I lose you?
We have it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not Hal Shearer. I'm actually Linda Veldhuis, and I'm married to Hal Shearer.
Fair enough.
But, you know, I mean, I really worry. I mean, I think that there are some good things that are starting to happen, the equity transfer, but, you know, I really worry that people are so focused on police reform that they're not really looking at the systemic racism, and that really worries me because, you know, we've kind of been here before in a way, but you know, and so my specific question is, there's a new center opening up in at BU, and I can't remember his first name, but the author is Kendi, and he will be part of that, the director of that particular effort. And I'm wondering if there's any thoughts about how the legislature or people in the legislature will interface with that BU. I mean, it's one of the big things I see happening in Massachusetts in the next couple of months. And I'll just add, because I don't think it's just equity transfer. I think, you know, the racism has been there, as you say, as you would admit, I mean, for 400 plus years, and it's been in education, it's been in housing, it's been in everything. So, I mean, there has to be a broader way to look at this and bigger solutions, I think.
I tend to think of it as not one solution, but a whole lot of solutions.
Yeah.
And I think you know, working on a lot of different fronts. And I think we want to redouble our efforts on every front. I think we want to most immediately redouble our efforts on the issue of police violence. But I think all these other things are on the table, and you know, we've created a conversation that I think that we'll have to continue and develop over the weeks and months to come after we get through the policing thing. But you know, the larger issues we absolutely have to keep struggling on, for sure.
Can I just add a little bit to that, Will? And I think certainly, you know, the COVID-19 has showed, you know, it opened our eyes to a lot of inequities that we all probably knew, but now is the time to try to address these as a community, as a country, and as a state. And I know Jackie mentioned that earlier about people afraid to go to the police. We can't let that happen in this community. I would hope you would reach out to us. I know there's many town councils who care and are on this call tonight. But I know, as many of you know, my brother's the police chief. I know he certainly would be horrified to hear that someone is afraid to come and seek assistance in this community. And we need to deal with that right away. We don't need to have that fester in this community. So hopefully you can reach out to us and let us know how we can help anyone who feels that way. And I think certainly as part of this police reform, certainly something that as a state that we have to figure out is the mental health issues. The mental health issues that our police are dealing with. Certainly that is going to take an enormous amount of funding, but there clearly needs to be help and assistance with people with mental health. And we need to, I think some of the positives that can come out of this is realizing that we need to do more. We need to do more to help people who are suffering from mental illness. So I think all of us coming together and figuring out these many challenges, I know that people want to do that and want to solve these problems, and it's going to take us coming together. But the mental health issues are certainly a big part of that as well.
But are people even aware? Are you aware of the BU Center opening up, and you know, hopefully the positive things that could bring out, and maybe lead the state in a way that will make a difference.
I think the thing is, look, these are conversations that are not new conversations. I mean, these are conversations we have to continue. So I think an additional focus, a new voice is always welcome. We'll certainly pay attention to that new voice, but I'd hate to think that this was we're suddenly talking about racism when we weren't talking about racism before. I think this has been front and center for a long time. John, I saw John Hecht.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think these new centers are important. I think I actually overhear a lot of conversations about BU because my wife teaches at the School of Public Health at BU, and I've as we're all in our homes, and she's working at one end of the kitchen and I'm working at the other end, and when she's got this computer on a Zoom meeting, I get to listen in, and I know that places like BU, and it's not the only place, are making a significant institutional commitment to amplifying the voices of people, and especially of people of color, who have learned experience, life experience, and unique perspectives that we need to be hearing. And I don't know that the legislature is necessarily the best, or certainly not the only place to have someone of that kind of caliber and learning and perspective, sort of concentrating their intellectual capital. I would hope that those sorts of currents would affect the legislature. I think they will, but I'm not sure you can sit us down, get everybody to sit down for a multi-day seminar. But I do think that there is something qualitatively different going on, and the center at BU is a good example of where we're recognizing that this needs to be a greatly amplified voice in all of our, whether it's in education, in public policy, in the media, in all the sorts of outlets that will influence the shape of the society that we live in. So I think the BU Center is an important part of this, and I think there are others as well. So I agree with you that needs to be a much bigger part of that bigger conversation.
Thank you. Let's go to Larry Raskin. Larry.
Hi, thanks for organizing this evening. This is just a great example of real democracy in action, so thank you for that. I read in the paper today that Boston hired an equity director, a very esteemed woman, at a cabinet level position to really look seriously at the city of Boston, its policies, its systems, its practices that disadvantage people of color, communities of color, and also to look at city government itself in terms of hiring and contracts and assignments and promotions and all the things that we've been alluding to here that show up in an unequal way. So I was curious about if there is something equivalent at the state level within state government, or if that is being considered, or if that would be a worthy thing to do, to have a person who has some high-level skills and experience and also can help to lead the change effort within state government. If anybody could speak to that, I'd be interested in hearing more.
I could say that we're talking about that issue, about whether that kind of role in some form would be useful, could be helpful in the state process, whether that could be within the legislature, pertaining to legislation. That's the level at which I've been having some conversations about that. Creating a cabinet level position, at the governor's level, that would be a different thing, which I actually haven't heard discussed. So that's an interesting thing that the mayor has done that I haven't really heard discussed at the state level. We do have various commissions that are devoted to the advancement of different groups. We have an Asian American commission. We're talking about the issue of an African American commission. We have all kinds of different organs that are designed to solve particular problems. Massachusetts Committee Against Discrimination, but we don't have a broad equity strategic thing like that. So that's an interesting thought.
Thank you.
I would just add to that, Larry, that I think that kind of position is only as good as as the chief executive makes it, right? So I just to establish a position like that in and of itself, to me, is not what needs to happen. I mean, you need a chief executive who's going to take take what that equity cabinet officer says seriously and really build it into every aspect of the work that he or she is doing. So there's a risk when you create that kind of position that you're actually kind of pigeonholing the concerns instead of making them common to all of the areas of government that need to be taking it into account. So I don't know. It really depends on whether the chief executive is going to kind of walk that walk.
Right. The importance of leadership. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I echo and concur with John's statement of what you just said, Larry.
If I could just add to,
Please.
Worked with the Black and Latino Caucus. The chairman of the Black and Latino Caucus is Representative Gonzalez from Springfield. And I know they are working on a lot of legislation for us to consider moving forward. So that is definitely at the state level. We worked as a committee with them on the election bill. It's important for us all to listen to the Black and Latino Caucus and the ideas that they come up with on how we should all be responding as a state government. I will say that I had this conversation with my brother, who said, Michael, the chief of police, last week. And many times I think a lot of us are trying to figure out, how to engage the community in these topics of discussion. And I think what we should be really looking at a local level is putting together a commission made up of people of color. And we should sit around and listen to them and tell that and listen to the ideas and the experience that they have at the local level, so that we can learn and that we can understand the challenges that are faced, so that we can change those at the local level. And if every community does that, we will all be much better for it.
Thank you. I'm just going to take note that it's about almost 8 o'clock. We will end at 8:30, and there are 10 people in line. Kathy Watkins, Lisa Feltner, and thank you for being with us, Councilor Feltner. John Hostage, Barbara Cullen, Amit Mukherjee, Daniel D'Amico, Ilan, Steve Salucci, and Mel Poindexter. So that's the lineup right now. Let's see if we can get to everybody, at least for once through. So Kathy Watkins. Let's see, let's make sure you are.
Okay, I think I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
You got it.
Hi, so I want to ask about a piece of pending legislation that I believe would be a big help in some of the issues that we've just been discussing. It's HR 3924. It was just voted out of the Housing Committee favorably. It's Mike Connolly and Nika Elguardo were the original sponsors. It's a tenant protection enabling bill, and it would allow each community, each town or city to legislate for themselves certain tenant protections. And it would not require any city or town to do anything. It would just enable them to, it goes over this home rule petition that we've had for so many years, and enable things like no fault evictions, some form of rent stabilization, condo conversion rules, different things. Well, we already have condo conversion rules, but lots of things like that. As you may have read in the Boston Globe and other publications, there's going to be a tsunami of evictions coming soon when the the moratorium on evictions, which that's actually another topic. But this is amazing that enough people have come together in the legislature to report this out favorably. And I would like to know what all of the elected officials here, what you think about this, and if you will be voting favorably on this landmark legislation.
I'll step up and give a kind of a little bit of a yes and no kind of gray answer on that, which may be unsatisfying. I can see you shaking your head already. But
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. No, seriously, like I am not entirely comfortable. I mean, I should say I'm affirmatively uncomfortable with rent control per se. And I actually don't think that's what's called for right now, because that was, I've never taken it off the table entirely, because as much as I think rent control could really screw up the housing market and result in less housing for people overall, the kind of displacement that's been occurring in every neighborhood of Boston, especially over the past few years, has been so bad that I could almost see going to it. But I do want to say I'm very uncomfortable with it. But what I actually think I actually think our problem is a different problem right now. I think the Conley-Eligardo bill really responded to what was happening before COVID. Now we're in which was an overheated housing market with prices going through the roof and people being pushed out of their apartments. And that was a very serious issue. I don't think that's what's happening now. I think what we have is people who can't pay their rent. I think we're going to see falling rents. I think rent control is going to be not the issue. What I think is the real issue is helping people to pay even the rent they were paying. And so finding a way to support people who are going to be out on the street, not because their landlord raised their rent, and rent control would have prevented that, but because simply they are out of a job and there is no job for them to be had. So our challenge right now is a different challenge, I believe.
So Representative Brownsberger, you do know the difference between an enabling bill and a bill that actually enacts rent control. This is not enacting rent control. It will allow your community, it will allow my community to tailor whatever, and other tenant protections as well. Right now, we have almost no tenant protections. As a tenant, I can tell you that. Even the basic state right to organize, we do not have in when you actually try to do it. So this is an enabling bill. If Belmont decides they don't want this, that's fine, but Cambridge and Boston need this. And so maybe I shouldn't have even said rent control, because that's like a huge word to a lot of the communities that are on this call who are, people of privilege that own homes and talk a good talk about all of this, racial equity and stuff. But when it comes to actually walking the walk, I do not see some of your communities actually doing that. So I'm just saying this is a huge thing that people in the housing committee, which represents a lot of communities across Massachusetts, have carefully studied and come together. This is an enabling bill. It does not force any town or community to implement rent control or any other tenant protections.
I do know that. I'll stand by my statement, though, that I think the crying need that I'm hearing from housing advocates, and I do listen very closely to a lot of housing advocates, is not for the opportunity to implement rent control, but for the need for funds to stabilize people in the homes that they have. Because right now there is 30% of the people in the state are out of work. That is our number one challenge, I think.
If I could just add a word or two. I mean, with all due respect, Will, I don't think it's an either or proposition. And I think you're absolutely right that we need to be doing something immediately about the potential tsunami of evictions that may be coming down the pike at us very soon. And Kathy, I don't know if you know that Mike, together with Kevin Honan, introduced another bill today specifically on the evictions question, and extending the moratorium, but also adding in some help for landlords who cannot go month after month after month, many of them without any income. So they are addressing hopefully the short-term problem. There was also a bill passed in the U.S. House today to provide substantial amount of money to help with people who are having trouble meeting their rents, and by extension the landlords. And I think I saw that the Baker administration today actually released some money from the CARES Act specifically for rental assistance. So there's a lot going on, and we're going to need to do a lot to address the near-term problem of evictions. At the same time, I think we can and we need to be addressing the longer-term issue of keeping people in their homes and keeping housing affordable, particularly in communities like the ones that we all live in, where housing affordability is just a massive, massive problem. And I think a lot of the sorts of things that are in the Connolly-Aguardo bill in terms of tenant protections are ones that cities and towns should be allowed to utilize if they think that it suits their housing market and their priorities as a community. The question of whether rent control should be part of that, I mean, there are pros and cons to it. There are a lot of studies that suggest that rent control does not actually help those most in need and doesn't lead to production of housing, which is a big part of the problem. But a lot of what's in the Connolly-Aguardo bill in terms of tenant protections, I think, makes a great deal of sense, particularly around here. And I think we ought to be giving cities and towns the option to utilize those tools if they want to.
Thank you. I just wanted to just add that it's interesting that now we see there is money for these things, whereas for many, many years, we've been told, no, there's no money, that we can't possibly do it, we can't possibly do it. A pandemic comes and we see there actually is money. So, and I think also another solution is to raise taxes on people that can afford it. That will give resources for alternate policing and all sorts of things like that. But thank you so much. I really appreciate both of your responses.
Thank you, Kathy. You live in Watertown?
Cambridge.
Cambridge. Okay. Fair enough. Well, happy to follow up online, or feel free to ping me with an email because there's a lot of things that I do support doing, and we touched the rent control thing, so I sort of led with my chin on that difficult issue. But there's a million other things I do want to do. So, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank
Are
you.
you
I'm
there, Lisa?
Lisa Feltner, Will.
Hey, Lisa.
Thank you, and thanks for having this forum to everybody. Shift gears just a little bit. I'm a little concerned about transportation, and I wonder your thoughts on that. Right now, I know the weather's great, but I see this pandemic going on for quite a while. And transportation, public space, I wonder at the state level how much appetite to help potentially municipalities, especially in Watertown where we're bordering DCR properties, to free up space or dedicate more space to pedestrian, bicycles, other modes of transportation. I do worry the economic fallout. People aren't going to really even be able to afford cars, but I know that self-distancing is an issue. So any just general thoughts on that? I do think public transportation is also an equalizer and very important. Thank you.
Well, I'll jump in a little bit. I feel transportation, as you know, Lisa, has been one of my top priority over the past couple of years. I mean, I've sort of felt this was the moment that something big could happen on transportation. Now I think I think everything's up in the air now. I mean, I think a whole lot of things have changed. I mean, two fundamental things have changed. One is that a whole lot of people have been forced to work from home. Basically 90% of people who were working out of the home, coming out of Belmont and Watertown, have been or been working from home, if they're working at all. And so then the question comes, how is it going to be when people go back? I mean, and my view, and I think a lot of data bears this out. I've done some polling of my own, and other polls are out there. A lot of people are not going to go back. They're not going to go back to work. They're going to continue working from home. And does that continue until we have like a vaccine or herd immunity and we don't have to be afraid of COVID-19 anymore? Or do we ever get to that point? Or do people just say, you know what, working from home really is doable and we can do a lot on Zoom? I mean, we're having 70 people on this call. We were up to about 90 something, I think, at the beginning. That's pretty hard to have a town meeting that big. I mean, this is a pretty darn good turnout for a town meeting. And, so Zoom actually works for people. It's easier for people to get out, for many people. It's not for everybody. I mean, some people, there's all kinds of different forms of it. But what I'm saying is our transportation demand profile, the total need for transportation and where that need is, may be changing. And the other thing, the dynamic out there is that people, whatever their need to get from here to there is, are less likely to want public transportation, much less likely, until they get some safety in the cars. I mean, they just do not want to be in a crowded car. And that's sort of an 80% or 90% of transit riders are saying that now. And those buses are empty, a lot of them, maybe 5-10 people at the peak. But so things are changing right now. The bottom line of all that is, I personally want to wait a few months to reassess before we take the next big plunge on transportation, because we don't know where we're going right now. That's what I think.
I guess if I could just interject on that, part of my concern is because we're looking at continuing development in Watertown, and my personal feeling is our zoning hasn't caught up. And so there's still a lot of pressure to keep building garages. And I certainly understand wanting to drive. And I agree with you, there's so much up in the air. But I'm hoping that there's still push for more creativity, whether it's with MassDOT or MBTA or even our municipal employees and government, in really thinking hard about our public spaces, transportation. But I guess, I'm also thinking ways we use those roads and sidewalks and traffic flow. So I know it's really complicated, but I just wanted to put that topic out there. I feel like it's also an equity issue and how safe or welcome people feel in our public space as well.
I should have said at the outset, I mean, I really agree with you about the issue about DCR making more of those, their properties more available to share transportation. Of course, they've been doing that, closing Greeno Boulevard and closing a lot of other things. So can we continue that? And that is a question that I have, extended to them, which is, can we keep some of that open so that we do have the alternatives to driving that are still there, as well as, which are also alternatives to public transportation. I'm sorry, I kind of monologued on that. John?
Just to add to that last point that you were making, Will, what we've seen with DCR in the recent period anyhow, is that they have been, I think, quite responsive to cities and towns that want to convert some of their roadways or some of their sidewalks along parklands to non-vehicular uses, or open them up in ways for people to feel comfortable because of the social distancing issues, to walk there, to bike there, to use other non-motorized forms of transportation. So I think Lisa, as counselor, you have led on these issues, and I think you have an opportunity, to sort of be leading the other counselors and the town to work with DCR on those things. And I think you'll find that they will be that they'll be welcoming. Whether at the end of the day they'll be able to do everything that you're hoping for, I can't say, but I found them to be quite open-minded about this, and again, mainly wanting to hear what the community itself wants.
I want to go to, we have our national our member of the Democratic National Committee, Mel Kleckner, Mel Poindexter on the line. I'm sorry, Mel. And I want to recognize, he's putting up his hand up. I want to recognize him for a question. Go ahead, Mel. Or a statement. Are you there, Mel? Well, we'll see. We'll come back to you, Mel, if you are able to unmute. Next in line, John Hostage.
Hi. Just this week, the state of Mississippi voted to remove the Confederate flag from its flag, but the flag of Massachusetts also has some issues, but problematic. It's actually the seal, I think, is really where the problem is. And I think both Will and John have co-sponsored a bill to form a commission to look at that issue. So I wonder if you have anything you can tell us about where that stands, where it's going right now.
I think it's alive. I think, I've talked about it recently with folks, and so I think it has a shot of movement. I'd like to see it move. I'm gonna keep talking about it.
Agreed. I mean, it got a favorable report out of committee, which was a big step because that bill has been pending for a long, long time. And I think you're right. I think the moment is now. So I think we're going to push on it.
Thanks, John. Barbara, Cullen, or Alan?
Very much for holding this conference. I'd like to flip back to an earlier issue where we were talking about safety measures to avoid a surge of the virus in this state, let alone the country. But initially, when we talked about safety measures, the things that were recommended, beside wearing masks and distancing from one another, was using disposable gloves. I no longer see most people using those gloves. And in particular, I'm concerned about the lack of them in establishments that handle food, whether it's people who actually put food packages together or serve, or the wait staff. But that really, I find that very troubling that as the restaurants open up, whether it's outdoor eating, indoor eating, that particular measure is being discarded. And I just wondered what your views might be. And if there's any legal action being taken, whether by the governor or any regional directive, local directive.
I'm not under the impression that gloves are a primary recommendation about controlling COVID. I mean, washing hands is a primary, is a critical recommendation, but that is as effective as wearing gloves. I mean, a glove can be a dirty thing. I mean, just because you have something over your, the real concern is touching your face and transferring COVID to your face, your nose or your eyes. And so I think there are other public health reasons to wear gloves. And in a lot of food establishments, they are required. So you do see people using them, but that's not a COVID thing as much as an ongoing health thing. I'd be delighted to be contradicted on this because I'm speaking a little bit outside my expertise.
I think this is a good question for us to take back to DPH, Department of Public Health, and to the advisory panels that they have of people who, in the medical field and public health field who know this. My understanding, Barbara, is that with the passage of time and the accumulation of experience and some data from actual scientific research, that concerns about transmission of COVID from surfaces have diminished. It was something that people were rightfully very concerned about at the outset, and there were some stories about the survivability of the virus on various surfaces for long periods of time. But I think that I think what's happened over the last few months is that the consensus among the public health and the medical people, and again, I would want to go back and confirm this, is that that's not really a primary mode of transmission. And as Will said, that the key is for everybody to be, washing their hands and avoiding touching their own faces. And the issue is less sort of, particularly, I mean, cooked food, there's really no risk of transmission there. And it's very unlikely that you're going to, pick it up from somebody else's hands. But we should double check that.
Well, I wasn't concerned so much about just ordinary touching, because yes, the scientific community had come out and said that it didn't seem to be the problem it was thought to be initially. But I was still concerned when it came to handling food and wait staff and restaurant usage.
Okay, well, again, let us take that back to
Thank you.
DPH and the medical people and follow up with you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to, if you could send me an email on that, Barbara, so that I, have contact information and also a reminder to look at it tomorrow. That would be great.
It'll be my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan D'Amico?
Hello. Thank you guys for setting this up. I just had a quick question regarding education and reopening the schools with COVID, and just to get an idea of what type of funding will be available. I've talked to some friends of mine who are teachers, and they had a lot of concerns, and especially since Watertown has a high English language learner population and special education population. I just wanted to see what that looked like, how that was being rolled out, and if you had any thoughts on that. Thanks.
I'll take first crack at that. Dan, it's a great question and incredibly complicated issue. I don't know if you got a chance to look at what DESE put out last week on school reopening. Have you seen that? They have a very long document.
Yeah, I read through part of it.
Okay.
Not all of it yet.
Yeah. So you've seen that, they're telling the schools to prepare for 3 different scenarios. And they are, hoping very much that there will be a lot of actual in-school learning and teaching going on. And they particularly emphasize, with, special ed and other, other sub populations that need, particular, sort of teacher intensive instruction that will take place principally in person. And so that does immediately raise the question of, all the expenses that are related to, the safety precautions that are going to be necessary to make that happen. There are a number of different sources of funding, most of them federal. And the schools I know have already received some money, federal money, and there is additional money that the Baker administration recently allocated for the expenses of school districts in preparing themselves for and then actually delivering education in the next school year in a way that is safe. So I don't think the issue is so much the money. I think the issue is, is some of the, sort of logistics of how you go about doing it. And one of the recommendations in the DESE guidance was to look for additional spaces outside the schools themselves so that you can have enough social distancing going on for that kind of in-person instruction. That I've been thinking about where in Watertown could we grab some additional space so schools can spread out a bit. That's not a simple issue. And then of course there's just so much uncertainty about what's going to happen with the virus over the next few months. So I'm less concerned about the money. I think the money will be there to make it happen. I think the issue is really, how are we actually going to create the right environments, and how are we going to deal with whatever curveballs come from the virus over the next, 6 to 9 months.
I think it's unbelievably difficult. This is one of the issues I'm personally most worried about and least able to articulate, a good set of answers on. I mean, I think, from early education to primary and secondary education to special education, really, especially for special education, that's really tough on parents, where you've got especially the older children with big special needs and not the ability to bring them into a supportive setting. It's just, there's just some really hard stuff coming down the pike in that space.
I would just add, I agree with both. And, COVID is certainly still unfolding. Education to job to housing to transportation. We're taking this, I think, month to month here, trying to plan and trying to figure out where this virus is taking us. But certainly that education and the challenges of educating our kids in a classroom setting to online learning is going to be something we're just going to continue to evolve. But yeah, I agree with Jonathan. The funding will be there. We're just going to have to realize how realistically we can educate our kids in this new world.
Got a few more minutes and a few more questions. Let's see how we can do. Alon? You're on mute, Alon. Let me see if I can unmute you there. Not hearing you yet, although you look like you're off mute. Still don't hear you. Could be your device is not pointing at the right microphone. But you know what? Take a look at that and we'll come back to you. Steve Salucci?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Just to go back to the question of community input on the racial justice issue, policing, and just broadly the racial justice challenges that we're facing. It made me think about, I agree that it's a really important question. I was glad, John Hecht, that you kind of put it out there to just say we're looking for what sorts of programs might need emphasis and just input on strategy, right? So it made me think about just one small thing, a question that came into my head, which is participatory budgeting and kind of think of it as maybe one or two steps up in terms of empowerment.
Hey, Alon, you're working now, by the way, so we'll come to you next.
In terms of empowerment of communities directly, right? So I mean, like forums like this are fantastic for sort of general input, and it's great to see them happen, and hopefully they're happening consistently in every town. But even one step better could be, and I don't know if this is something that's more on a city level, and there probably need to be creative solutions for this, or maybe even additional capital made available. But I'm just curious about if you have any thoughts on the availability of, or the possibility of doing some type of participatory budgeting model, maybe with extra state funding directed towards those initiatives for Black and Brown communities. So could respond briefly or offline or whatever. I just really wanted to put that.
You know what? Why don't we take that as I'm concerned that we're going to run out of time, and I want to make sure. So let's take that as a statement, because I don't think there's any
statement's great.
Quick answer.
I'd be happy to discuss that with you more. I'm very interested in all these forms of deliberative democracy, and Cambridge, of course, has experience with participatory budgeting, but the idea of extending that, particularly in the current circumstances, to thinking about reallocation of resources to areas of need, I think is a great idea. How we do that at the state level is, not easy to figure out.
Obvious.
I'd love to talk to you about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Also happy to talk about it as well.
Okay.
Now
okay,
I think we got Alon has got her stuff working, and it's on you, Alon.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you very much. And I've been listening to all of the comments, and I have a question. And going back to the question of confronting racism in the state of Massachusetts, locally and statewide, has there been any thought given to addressing, I guess, racism without, I guess, redistributing private property? It seems like there's this discussion about reallocating sources and redistributing our property and paying more taxes and putting allocating income to certain groups. And as a minority, as a person of color, I'm hearing this. And first of all, I'd like to state, I don't want anybody's handouts. And I don't really understand. What I really want is to, well, have equality, but not have people handing out things to me or pigeonholing me as somebody in need when all I want is racial equality. And I don't understand. I'm just trying to think, has the legislature given any thought to perhaps other ways beyond increasing taxes and reallocating wealth to addressing racism? And my second question is with respect to police reform. Has there been thought given to how to manage, well, let me put it this way. My friends and I, one of the reasons why we don't say much when it comes to treatment that we've received is we all know or we all understand implicitly that DCFS or authorities will be called in to take our children. In your, I guess, police reform, is there discussion about perhaps lowering the use of that as a weapon against people of color?
Lowering the use of DCF?
DCF, yes, Department of Family and Children's Services as a way of managing people of color who don't cooperate.
Oh.
It's a reality. I think I'm just trying to come up with, I was just wondering, because that's something that's a real fear. What happened in Minneapolis was a terrible tragedy. That happening in Watertown, I don't see it. But what I do see, and a lot of people of color and I talk about, is if we say anything, we know that the powers that be can call DCFS on us and take our children, which is why many of us are quiet. So those are my two questions.
I guess I hear them as kind of dovetailed, which is, what things could we do that, forget about income transfer, which I hear you, but focus on what can you do to reduce racism, full stop, and with or without money.
Exactly. Well, what's oppressive to me is being overregulated and overtaxed. If you really wanted to take away my oppression, you would deregulate and reduce or get rid of taxes. But I don't think that's on the table right now. And so, but as a person of color, we're not all the same. I personally don't want more handouts. In fact, I don't want any handouts. I just want to be treated equally. And one thing I do know is if I act up, or anybody, all of us parents of color who have acted up, we know implicitly DCFS can be called on us at any given time. And it's one of the reasons why many of us are quiet.
You know what? I think we should take offline the question of DCFF and your experiences with that, or your friends' experiences with that. Because if there's any discriminatory application of that or something, I'd really like to hear about that in a very specific way.
I mean, I'm speaking generally. I mean, I thought this was a forum where we could, I was just wondering if that was something that's taken into consideration in your police reform bill, because it's not always somebody being brutally murdered on TV for 8.5 minutes. There are different ways to address or adjust or manage a public, and using different departments as a threat it's not the first time. I can't believe I'm the first person who's ever bringing this up. I just thought maybe was there any kind of allowance for that in any bills that you've seen coming across your table?
There's a lot of allowance there's a lot of focus on reducing racism in police activity.
And for the record, I support the blue, and I think Watertown Police Department is great. I have no beef. I'm just, in general, having witnessed this and seen this, and if you want to know what some of us, parents of color or ethnics are worried about and live with every day, we live with this reality in the schools and in law enforcement. This is used to manage us. And I was just wondering if there's any discussion about that.
You started that discussion for me. That is not a discussion that I've heard so far.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I'm a trailblazer on that level.
Well, you are. So, but I would like to continue it with you. And so I hope I'm easy to reach. We've got it. We're actually at the end of our hour and a half. In fact, we're a few minutes over. I'm sorry to Pam's iPhone and to Julia, my friend Julia. You know how to reach me, so you can get me on the phone tomorrow, or any of the other folks. And Pam, I apologize wherever you are. We are out of time. And Ilan, I would love to hear more of what you're saying. And I hope you know how to reach me. I'm easy to reach. My website, willbrownsberger.com. John Lawn and so forth are easy to reach. And John Hecht is easy to reach. I'm sure we'd all be eager to hear more about that specific concern, because it is not one that's been brought as part of this conversation so far. So I want to hear more about it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being part. Any last words, John or John? Anything, goodbyes or?
No, Alana, just to reiterate, I also represent Powder Newton. Kay Khan is the chairwoman of Department of Children and Families, the Committee on Children and Families, and I'm sure she'd be happy if we could set up a meeting if there's something specific you want us to look at. But I think, I know you're trying to get a point across, and maybe we're just a little bit confused, but we're happy to work with you on
yes.
that.
Number one, I love you guys, and I'm not trying to criticize on any level. I'm just, these are things, and back the blue all the way. So, no, I'm not trying to complain about a local police. I'm just saying these are the things that if you want to see racial equality, reallocating, taking some more money from another person is only going to make them hate me more. But maybe perhaps not deconstructing our family because we come across as different would be helpful. Just say, not. That's right. But absolutely no complaints. So. And I turn red when I'm nervous. So
that's okay.
Apologize.
That's okay. John, any last words, Hecht?
Just thank you, everybody, for being part of this. I mean, I would love to hear, Ilana, I'm on that committee, Children and Family, so you got an ear here as well. And I would love to hear further ideas from you as well as from others about how we're going to address systemic racism.
But reducing taxes and deregulating would be welcome too. Just saying, just putting it out there.
I hear you. I don't know how that addresses racism, but
it's an awesome.
I hear where you're coming from.
It's a beautiful start.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, diversity of views. We love it. That's thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for the conversation. Glad to have different views on here. I appreciate everybody's contributions. Thank you so much. And thank you to Watertown Cable so much for hosting us and getting this across the media. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Will. Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so.
Thank you, guys.